You ever have that moment at a family dinner where someone says something so shitty and everyone laughs except you? Yeah, that was me. Every damn holiday. I'm Nate, 33, tech consultant by title, but that barely scratches the surface. Anyway, this story isn't about what I do. It's about how, for years, I was the joke at every family gathering, the weird one, the still figuring it out guy. And trust me, that title stuck harder than any job I ever had. Growing up in Indiana, everything was about image. My dad, Russell, owned a construction company. My mom, Lila, played housewife like it was 1953. My older sister, Morgan, married her college sweetheart, popped out twins, and never once let me forget she was the successful sibling. Then there was my younger brother, Brad Golden Boy turned mortgage broker who'd talk about interest rates like he was curing cancer. Me, I built weird little apps in my room, started freelancing out of my dorm, built websites for small businesses, got ghosted by job recruiters more times than I could count. But I loved it. It gave me something they couldn't define: freedom. Did they ask about it? Nope. Holidays were brutal. Every Thanksgiving, I'd be halfway into my mashed potatoes and Brad would crack a joke like, "So, Nate, you still working on that little website thing?" Then he'd laugh like he said something original. Morgan would follow with, "Oh, you mean his online hobby?" And Dad would just go, "At least he's not asking for money." Hilarious, right? I laughed, because what else could I do? Last Christmas, I swear I almost walked out. It was Christmas Eve at Morgan's house. Fancy as hell. Candlelit dinner, curated playlist, even monogrammed napkins like we were dining at Buckingham Palace. I brought a decent bottle of wine, $60, not too shabby, and Morgan straight up said, "Oh, how cute. Did you get this at Target?" I smiled. I mean, what the hell do you even say to that? Then came dinner. Brad told a story about closing $1 million deal. Dad nodded like he just watched his son win the Super Bowl. Mom clapped. Morgan beamed. When they asked what I'd been up to, I said, closed a SaaS deal with a startup in Seattle, scaled a product, might onboard a new team next quarter. Blank stares. Brad. So, like, get it support. Mino. Product development. Dad. Huh. Well, you always were good with gadgets. Morgan. You should tell kids about that, like, career day. I excused myself to the kitchen. I stood there, hands gripping the countertop, staring at the damn lemon pie like it held answers. That was the moment. That right there, the switch flipped. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done trying to prove anything. Done trying to be invited. Done laughing at shit that wasn't funny. I drove back to my place that night, windows down, silence in the car except for the sound of my own thoughts finally getting a word in. 2 months later, I closed on a property just outside Denver, gated, private, mountain view. You wouldn't believe the fireplace. I didn't tell anyone, not out of spite, just because I knew they wouldn't care, or worse, they'd mock it. So I threw a party. No family, just friends, clients, some former coworkers who'd been in the trenches with me. Real people, people who saw me for me. I didn't post it online, but my friend Kyle did. A photo. Me, standing on the balcony, glass of whiskey in hand, the skyline glowing behind me. Caption read, "Not bad for the family disappointment." And that, my friend, is when all hell broke loose. The morning after that photo went up, I woke up to chaos. 10 missed calls, 4 from Mom, 2 from Brad, 1 from Morgan, 3 from some random number, probably Aunt Jan. Then came the texts. Mom, Nathaniel, what is this? Why didn't you tell us? Morgan, wow, so we're not even good enough to see your new place. Brad, dude, WTF, that's your house. I didn't respond. Not to any of them. Instead, I made a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the balcony. Cold air hit my face, crisp, clean, no noise, no snide remarks, just peace, real, honest-to-God peace. By noon, it got worse. Someone, probably Morgan, had texted a screenshot of Kyle's post to the family group chat. I hadn't opened that thread in months. It was just full of recipe links and baby pictures and the occasional pray for grandma's hip update. This time, a war zone. Aunt Jan. Oh wow, Nate, what a house. Uncle Rick didn't know you were doing that well. Cousin Joey bro, you ballin' now? Then Morgan jumped in. Morgan would have been nice to see this in person. Guess family doesn't matter anymore. Mom, we raised him better than this. I stared at that last line for a while. We raised him better than this. Better than what? Better than buying a home. Better than thriving on my own. Better than having a life that wasn't built around their approval. Screw that. I muted the thread. That night, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the cam. It was Brad. Wearing a puffer vest and that dumb Alpha Mortgage Solutions cap he thinks makes him look professional. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I cracked the door open. What? He gave me a half smile. Dude, come on, let me in. I stepped aside. He walked in like he owned the place, looked around, whistled low. Jesus, this place is insane. I said nothing. He turned back toward me. Why didn't you tell us? I crossed my arms. Would it have mattered? He blinked. I mean, yeah, your family. Family, I repeated, like when you laughed at me for freelancing or when you told Dad I should get serious and join Ariel Company. Brad sighed. Look, we gave you crap. It wasn't that deep. No, it was deeper than you think. I said every dinner, every birthday, every time you reduced what I did to some joke, it chipped away. And now that I've built something, suddenly it's real. He looked uncomfortable, but not guilty. Not really. Whatever, man, I just came by to say, Mom's pissed and hurt. Good, I said, she should be. Come on, it's not like you were some outcast. We included you. I laughed out loud. You included me like background music, something you forget's even there. I was the one setting up chairs, taking pictures, picking up wine last minute. Not because I wanted to, because no one else bothered. Brad shrugged. Okay, so you were quiet. We didn't get it. Doesn't mean we don't love you. I shook my head. Love without respect isn't love. Brad, it's pity. And I'm done being pitied. There was a pause. Then he muttered, You think you're better than us now? I stared at him. No, I think I finally see you for who you are. He opened his mouth to fire back, then thought better of it. Instead, he just said, Well, don't expect Mom to forgive this. I'm not asking her to. He left. No goodbye. That night, I felt a mix of anger and relief. I poured myself a drink, stood outside, and watched the city lights blink like little victories. Small wins that added up to something big, something they never saw coming. 2 days later, the letter arrived. A real one, on fancy paper, from Mom. Nathaniel, I don't know what's gotten into you. You've embarrassed the family. We always supported you, even when we didn't understand. Please don't make us outsiders in your life. No apology, just control wrapped in guilt. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a photo from the party. Just one, me, laughing with friends, the house glowing behind us. Caption, grateful for real ones. I didn't tag family, but they saw it. Oh, they saw it. The next morning, Morgan called. I ignored it. Then she texted Mom's crying. Hope you're happy. I texted back finally. Some honesty in the family. She didn't reply. The following weekend, I hosted another dinner. Just friends again. We drank, talked shop, played cards, listened to music. No judgment, no jokes at my expense. During cleanup, my friend Amanda said, You know, it's wild. You're the most grounded person I know, and your family made you feel like a sidekick. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She added, "You ever think they were just scared you'd outgrow them?" That hit me harder than expected. Yeah, maybe that's exactly what it was. A week later, Morgan tried again. Showed up at my place with a lemon pie, the same one from Christmas. Figured we should talk. I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. She looked around like she couldn't believe I lived here. "I still don't get how you did all this," she said. "You never asked." I said. She exhaled. "Look, we were dicks. You didn't deserve it." I appreciated the honesty. But then she said, "Still, I think Mom deserves a chance to see this place. Maybe we can do a small dinner." And there it was, the ask. I leaned back. Why, so she can take a photo, show her friends, and say, "Look what my son built," when she never once believed I could. Morgan frowned. "She misses you. Maybe she should have acted like she knew me." There was a long silence. Then Morgan said something that surprised me. "You know what, I think we were just jealous. You did something none of us had the guts to do. You bet on yourself. We mocked it, because we didn't understand it. I didn't say anything. I just let it sit in the air between us." Then she stood up, grabbed her purse, and said, "I won't bug you again. I get it now." I watched her walk out. I felt strange, not angry, not smug, just sad. Sad it took me disappearing for them to finally see me, and still not enough to go back. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the embarrassment. I was the one with the keys, and they were on the outside. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no surprise visits, no pie at the door. Silence, bull. It should have felt peaceful, and in a way, it did. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't check my phone more than usual. Just to see, old habits die hard, I guess. Then one afternoon, something weird happened. I got a FedEx envelope. No return address, just my name scribbled in bold marker. Inside, legal papers. At first, I thought it was junk, maybe some sketchy business solicitation, but then I saw the words Notice of Intent to Mediate, Family Estate Contribution and Reimbursement Claim. My heart stopped. I flipped through the pages. Their names were on it: plaintiffs Lila Thompson, Morgan Reed, Bradley Thompson. They were claiming that because I had benefited financially from years of familial emotional support and development, I owed them a portion of my company's equity. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was insane. But there it was. They'd actually filed this, said I built my success on family foundation, said they sacrificed for me to flourish, said I owed them. I dropped the papers on the table and stared at them like they were radioactive. This wasn't guilt-tripping anymore. This was legal manipulation. And I knew exactly who was behind it. Brad. He worked in finance, knew enough about business structures to weaponize the little he knew. I poured a drink, sat down, stared out the window. They weren't mad that I left. They were mad that I left and didn't fail. A few hours later, I got a text from my lawyer friend Jess. "Hey, I saw your name in a court record pull. Need help?" She's the one who first taught me how to set up an LLC. We hadn't talked in months. I sent her a photo of the claim. She replied 5 seconds later, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen." We met up the next day. She tore the claim apart in 20 minutes. Said it wouldn't hold up in any legitimate court, but if I didn't respond, they could use it to keep harassing me. "They're not trying to win," she said. "They're trying to get leverage, scare you, get a payout." I nodded. What do? We respond, legally, aggressively, and publicly if needed. I leaned back, publicly. Jess smiled. "You've got a platform now. Let them see what happens when you push the quiet one too far." That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to a podcast host. One I'd turned down a few months ago, big show, millions of downloads, all about startup stories and personal grit. I told him I was ready to talk. 2 days later, I was in his studio, just me, a mic, and a cup of lukewarm coffee. Today's guest is Nate Thompson. The host said, founder of MindHabit, one of the fastest growing AI mental health startups in the Rockies. But that's not the only reason he's here. I told the story, not in detail, not naming names, but enough for anyone who knew to recognize it. I talked about being undermined, dismissed, ridiculed by people closest to me. Talked about building alone, doubting myself, then learning how to stand without needing a cheerleader. Sometimes, I said, the people you think will clap for you when you win are the ones hoping you lose quietly. That episode blew up. Comments flooded in. Damn, this hit home. I have a Brad in my life too. This is the most honest thing I've heard in ages. It made top 10 on Spotify's trending list within 48 hours. And then came the backlash. Not from strangers, from them. Morgan posted a vague status on Facebook. Some people rewrite history to look like heroes, but real family doesn't need podcasts. Brad commented under it, clout chasing is a disease. And Mom, she sent me an email. Subject line, you've hurt us deeply. The body was a mess, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, revisionist history. I never called you a failure. We only ever teased you with love. You're the one making this ugly. I didn't respond. Instead, I shared a clip from the podcast, a short one, just me saying, the biggest lie I believed was that I had to earn my place in my own family. I didn't tag anyone, but the message landed exactly where I wanted it to. The next day, Jess called. They're backing off. She said, Brad's lawyer quietly withdrew the claim. We scared them. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But in a clean way, like a room that's finally been cleared of clutter. A few days later, Morgan showed up at my place, again. But this time, she didn't bring pie. She brought an apology. A real one, eyes puffy, voice low. I didn't know he filed that. I swear. I looked at her. You knew what he was capable of. She nodded. Yeah, but I didn't think he'd go that far. He didn't go that far, I said. You all did. Over years. Morgan sat on the steps outside. You were right. You know, we never really saw you. Why now, I asked. Because now the world sees you, and it's undeniable. That word hung in the air. Undeniable. I wasn't some side character anymore. I wasn't the tech guy with a little project. I was the guy who made it. Despite them, without them. Morgan stood up, brushed her hands off. You don't owe us anything. I get that now. I nodded. I won't ask for a second chance, she added, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Then she left. Just like that, I walked back inside, closed the door, sat down on the couch and stared at the legal documents still sitting on the counter. I didn't throw them away. I framed them, put them on the wall of my office right next to the article from Forbes that ran the following week. The founder who outgrew his past and built an empire on his own terms. 'Cause I wanted to remember. Every time they tried to diminish me, it just gave me fuel. Every dig, every joke, every moment they made me feel like a side character. I turned it into momentum, and now they had to watch the credits roll, without their names in it. A week after the Forbes piece dropped, I got an invite I didn't expect. A handwritten card in the mail like something out of a Hallmark commercial. No name on the envelope, just my address. Inside cursive script. Family dinner, just us, no pressure. Sunday, 6 p.m., Mom. I read it twice. No guilt this time. No you embarrassed us undertone. Just an invite. It felt weird, like she finally figured out how to ask without demanding. I tossed the card onto the counter, let it sit there for days. By Saturday, I still hadn't decided. Then, Sunday morning, I got a text from Carly, my cousin, one of the only relatives who hadn't chimed in during all the drama. She just said, "If you go tonight, do it for you, not for them." And that hit, because for once, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about closure, or maybe curiosity. So yeah, I pulled up to the same old house I used to sneak out of at 16, the driveway cracked in the same spot, the porch light still flickered. As I walked up, I half expected to feel dread. Instead, I just felt detached, like visiting a place you used to live but don't recognize anymore. I rang the bell. Mom opened the door. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just softer, less composed, like she was trying to hold something together and barely managing. "Nate," she said, like it was both a question and a prayer. I nodded once. "Hey." She led me in. The table was set. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, store-bought pie, the usual, but quieter. No one else had arrived yet. "They'll be here soon," she said. I wanted a moment before. I raised an eyebrow. Before what? She didn't answer, just motioned for me to sit. A few minutes later, Morgan and Brad showed up. No hugs, just stiff hellos. We sat, ate, mostly in silence. Then Mom cleared her throat. "I just want to say thank you for coming." I waited. So did everyone else, yeah. Then she added, "And I'm sorry for everything." That shocked me. She wasn't one for apologies. Ever. Brad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Morgan looked at her plate. "I think," Mom continued, "we got too comfortable with seeing you a certain way. And when you changed, we didn't know how to handle it." I sipped my water, said nothing. She kept going. "I wanted to believe I supported you, but I think what I really did was tolerate you, and that's not the same." Finally, I spoke. "No, it's not. I'm sorry for calling you the embarrassment." That part made Brad look up sharply. "You said that he asked?" "Don't act surprised." I said, deadpan. He went quiet. Morgan jumped in next. "I told everyone you ghosted us, but I think we ghosted you first. It was like the dam broke." Suddenly, all the stuff they should have said years ago was pouring out. How they didn't take me seriously. How they joked because they didn't understand. How they assumed silence meant contentment. I just listened. Let them spill it. When they were done, I looked around the table. Then said the only thing I could. "I appreciate that." Long pause. But Brad said, arms crossed, "But it doesn't erase it." They nodded. Surprisingly, no one argued. "And just so we're clear," I added, "this isn't me stepping back into your narrative. I have my own now." More nods. Slower, heavier. "I don't need this dinner to feel whole." I said, "But I showed up because I think I needed to see if you could." Mom wiped a tear. "Not performative, real." Morgan smiled a little. Brad just looked tired. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was real. After dessert, which tasted like regret and lemon, I got up to leave. Mom walked me out. At the door, she said, "I know we're not owed a place in your life, but I hope someday you'll let us earn it." I didn't promise anything. I just said, "That's on you." Then I left. Back in my car, I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't feel vindicated. Just steady. Like I'd finally shifted the weight off my chest. Later that night, I got a DM from a guy named Carlos, one of my early clients, years ago. A pizza shop owner whose POS system I'd rebuilt for peanuts back when I was just starting. "Saw your podcast? Man, I knew you'd blow up. You still the same dude. Real. Hope you're thriving." And that meant more than any of the crap I heard over roast chicken, because Carlos, he saw me when I was still invisible to the people who should have known better. The next week, I had another dinner. Not family. Chosen family. People who never made me prove myself to be in the room. We laughed, ate, took dumb photos, talked about nothing and everything, and at some point, Kyle, the guy who posted the balcony photo, raised a glass to Nate. He said, who finally made them watch from the outside. Everyone laughed. I just smiled. Not bitter. Not smug. Just free. The thing about closure is, no one tells you how quiet it gets afterward. No more angry texts. No more family update group chats blowing up with fake cheer. No one demanding anything. Just silence. And in that silence, all the noise in my head got louder. A few weeks after that family dinner, I caught myself standing in front of my framed legal letter, the one from Brad and the others, just staring at it, not out of spite. Just wondering, how the hell did it get that far? And the worst part, I knew the answer. It was me. Yeah, they were awful, but I let it build. I played along. I laughed at the jokes. I made excuses for them. I kept showing up, hoping they'd notice something different about me, hoping one day they'd stop seeing me as the screw-up little brother and start seeing me as me. But I never forced the conversation, never demanded better. I just took it. And that part, that was on me. I called my therapist that afternoon. I hadn't seen her in months, not since before I closed the Series A round that changed everything. She picked up on the second ring. Hey stranger, she said, thought you forgot about me. I laughed. Trust me, I didn't. The session hit hard. We didn't talk about the house or the party or the podcast. We talked about little Nate, 8-year-old me, the one who got ignored at dinner, the one who stopped raising his hand in class because every time he got excited, someone rolled their eyes. We talked about the version of me that learned to stay small to avoid getting mocked, and how that version lingered in the background way too long. You never really had a chance to rewrite your role, she said, so they kept casting you the same way. Yeah, I replied, until I walked off the damn set. She smiled. Exactly. That night, I did something strange. I dug through an old box in my closet and pulled out a bunch of notebooks from college old ideas, abandoned app sketches, half-written plans from when I was dreaming more than building. Flipping through them felt like reconnecting with a younger version of myself I forgot I loved. One note, scribbled in red ink, stood out. One day they'll ask how I did it, and I won't owe them the story. It hit me in the chest. Even back then, I knew this road wouldn't come with applause, and that was the real power. Now I didn't need them to understand it. I just needed to remember why I started. A few days later, I flew to Seattle for a tech conference, not to speak, just to attend, to reconnect. I ran into some old faces, people who'd met me when I was still pitching ideas in coffee shops or hacking together MVPs on no sleep. Every single one of them said the same thing. You haven't changed. At first, I thought that was weird. Then I realized what they meant. The core of me didn't change. The ambition, the focus, the quiet fire, the stuff my family missed because they only looked for surface-level success. That's when I made a decision. I was done shrinking, even in memory. I got back home and opened up a blank doc. Title: The Help Doesn't Stay Silent Forever. No, I wasn't writing a book, not yet, but I started documenting the full story, not for pity, not for clicks. For clarity, for me. Because telling the truth out loud, even just to myself, felt like medicine. While I was writing, I got a text from Carly. Hey, Morgan told me you're writing stuff down. That's awesome. I replied, yeah, needed to sort it all out. Put it somewhere. She responded, if you ever want to include the family side, I'm willing to talk, Like, off the record. That surprised me. Not because Carly was known for being fake, she wasn't, but because she usually stayed neutral to avoid confrontation. I texted back, sure, not yet, but I'll let you know. The next week, my team launched our biggest product update ever. We rolled out an AI wellness suite, partnered with a few massive platforms, and started trending on Product Hunt. The office, our new downtown space, was buzzing. My CTO, AMITHEA, pulled me aside after the launch party. "You've been quiet all week," she said. "Just thinking. About the family stuff?" I nodded. "You know they're watching, right?" she said. "Every move you make, every headline, they're still trying to figure out how they missed it." "Let them wonder," I said. "That's their penance." Anita clinked her glass with mine. "To freedom." "To peace," I added. A few nights later, I hosted another dinner at my place. Not a party, just 6 people, close friends, some from way back, others newer. People who didn't see me as a walking resume or a cautionary tale. Carly showed up. First time she'd ever been to my house. She brought a bottle of wine and a candle labeled Fresh Start. Kinda cheesy, kinda perfect. We talked for hours not just about family, but about how hard it is to grow up with a label you never chose. She said something that stuck with me. "We all played parts to keep the family machine running. You were just the first one to step off the conveyor belt." That hit deep, because it was true. Everyone in that house, Mom, Brad, Morgan, even Carly, had become characters in a performance. Responsible sibling, high achiever, the pretty one, the stable one, the weird one, and I was the only one who tore up the script. Near the end of the night, Carly looked around my place, the art, the books, the absence of family photos, and said, "You know, this doesn't feel cold like I expected. It feels intentional." That meant a lot. She didn't ask to stay the night. She didn't try to guilt me into anything. She just hugged me and said, "Whatever this is, I hope it brings you peace." It was the first time a family member left my house without taking something. No guilt, no shame, just honesty. I slept like a rock that night. 3 months later, I stood in front of a crowd of 300 at the Denver Founders Forum. Spotlights, microphones, a giant screen behind me with my face on it. Weird. If you told me 5 years ago this would be my life, I would have laughed. Hell, if you told me 2 years ago I'd be considered a voice in tech, I probably would have said, "Yeah, right." But there I was. And when they introduced me, Nate Thompson, founder and CEO of MindHabit, voted one of the top 10 emerging companies of the year, I didn't feel nervous. I felt steady. I gave my talk, 15 minutes, no buzzwords, just real talk, about building while nobody's clapping, about rejection, about family, about being underestimated. I ended it like this. At some point, you realize the story you've been told about yourself isn't the one you have to live out. And when you write your own version, not everyone claps. That's okay. You clap for yourself. The applause hit hard. People stood up. Some cheered. A few even cried. I stepped off stage feeling weightless. Backstage, Carly was waiting. She flew out just for the event. She hugged me. "You did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, "I did." On the ride back to the hotel, she asked me something unexpected. Would you ever go back? Not to how it was, but would you ever fully let them in again? I looked out the window. Denver lights blurred past like memories I didn't need anymore. "No," I said, "not fully." She didn't argue, she just nodded. Later that night, I checked my email. Mom had sent a photo. Old family picture. Thanksgiving, maybe 15 years ago. Everyone's laughing. I'm off to the side, half in the frame. The caption read, "We see you now. I'm sorry we didn't then." I didn't reply. I just saved it in a folder called Perspective. A month passed. Then 2, No drama, no backhanded comments on Facebook, no weird letters or legal moves. Just silence, the good kind. In that silence, I started living. I took a road trip. Just me, the car, and a playlist full of early 2000s indie rock. I started painting again, nothing good, just enough to make my walls look less curated. I reconnected with a friend from college I hadn't talked to in a decade. And most importantly, I stopped narrating everything in my head like I had something to prove. Because when your whole life has been one long audition for acceptance, unlearning that performance takes time. But I was doing it. One unchecked notification at a time. One meal shared without obligation. One laugh that didn't feel like armor. One night in April, I hosted a panel for young startup founders, Quanda style, super casual. At the end, this kid barely 20, scruffy hair, big energy raised his hand and said, "How do you deal with people not believing in you?" And I said, "Stop waiting for belief. Build anyway. Belief is optional. Your work is not." He nodded like it hit him somewhere deep. And as I packed up, he jogged up to me. "I listened to your podcast." He said, "The one about being the family embarrassment." That was me. I smiled. "You still in it?" He shrugged, trying to get out. I handed him my card, wrote my personal number on the back. "Text me if you ever need to vent." I said, "I've been there." He looked stunned. "You'd do that?" "Yeah," I said, "because someone should have done it for me." He walked away holding that card like it meant something. Maybe it did. Summer rolled in. We landed a feature in TechCrunch. I signed my first book deal, part memoir, part business strategy, all unfiltered. Title: Burn the Rulebook Building Without Permission. Carly helped me pick the title. She said it sounded like something I would have yelled at 13 and believed at 33. And in the middle of all this momentum, I got a call from Morgan. I hadn't heard from her in a while. She said, "Hey, I know this is random, but Dad's selling the house." I blinked. "What?" "He wants to downsize. Mom's on board. Says too many ghosts in that place." I didn't say anything. Morgan continued, "They asked if you wanted to come by before it's gone. One last look." I almost said no. But something in me was curious, so I went. Not for them, for me. The house was smaller than I remembered. Isn't that always the case? The porch creaked the same way. The fridge still made that weird humming sound. And the old table, the one I ate 1,000 awkward dinners at, still there. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad sat on the couch, watching a muted golf game. They didn't jump up, didn't cry, just said, "Hey, Nate." I nodded. "Hey." We didn't talk much, just wandered room to room, looked at old photos, cringed at haircuts, laughed a little. In my old room, the walls were still that awful green I'd picked in middle school. There was a poster of a band I'd forgotten I loved. And tucked in the closet, a shoebox full of drawings I made when I was 10, superhero comics, game ideas, doodles of robots. I sat on the bed and flipped through them. One of them had a note scrawled in messy handwriting. "When I grow up, I want to make things that change people's lives." My chest tightened. That kid, he didn't care what anyone thought. He just wanted to build. He's still in here, I thought, stronger than ever. I left the drawings on the bed, walked back out to the living room. They offered dinner. I declined. Mom looked disappointed, but she didn't press. As I reached the door, Dad stood up. "You've done good, kid," he said. "Took me too long to say it, but I mean it." I nodded. "Thanks." I stepped outside, sunlight hitting my face, and I realized that moment those 4 words didn't heal me. But they didn't hurt anymore either. They were just there. Like a note at the end of a chapter, not the final line. Just part of the page. Back home, I poured myself a drink. Sat out on the balcony as the sun dipped below the hills. My phone buzzed. A text from Carly? How'd it go? I replied, weird, fine, kinda beautiful. She texted back a gif of someone clapping alone in an empty theater. I laughed, then looked around. I wasn't alone, not really. I had my company, my people, my peace, and most importantly, myself. The final thing I'll say, you don't need revenge to win. You don't need to burn bridges for warmth. Sometimes the loudest victory is living well so well that the people who doubted you have to reimagine you in silence. Not because you rubbed it in, but because you didn't need to anymore. Because you grew so far past their imagination, they couldn't follow. And that's the best kind of freedom. Not escape, evolution. And I earned every damn step. Story 2. The day my sister was supposed to marry, the man of her dreams started with sunshine, laughter, and a text that nearly stopped my heart. We were in our sleepy Michigan town, in the kind of neighborhood where everybody waves, and potlucks are still a thing. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and overbaked casseroles, and wedding decorations fluttered from every bush in our backyard. I was hanging up streamers when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, thought it was probably a vendor or maybe Aunt Carla, who always got lost even with GPS. But when I did, don't let Zoe marry him. Check your stepmom's cabin now. No name, just those words. I stared at the message, confused. My sister Zoe was inside getting her makeup done. The guy she was marrying, Brian Thompson, big-time paralegal, smooth talker, perfect teeth, too perfect, in my opinion. And then there was Candace, our stepmom of 15 years. She married my dad after mom died. She was strict, organized, polished like a magazine cover, but she loved us, or so I thought. Her cabin was a tiny A-frame about 30 minutes away, tucked into the woods near Lake Henrietta. Candace called it her quiet retreat, and none of us were really allowed up there unless invited. She'd go for long weekends, sometimes alone, sometimes claiming she needed space to realign her soul, whatever that meant. I reread the message, my gut twisted. Was this about Brian? I glanced toward the house, through the kitchen window. I saw Candace arranging tulips like a professional florist, her every movement measured. Zoe's laughter floated down the hallway, light and happy. And then I noticed something strange. Candace stepped out onto the patio, where Brian stood alone and gently touched his arm. He didn't pull away. I blinked. Was that affection? Was I being paranoid? No, this was supposed to be Zoe's big day. If there was even a chance something was wrong, I had to know. I texted my best friend Milo. Weird message, cabin, need backup. His response was instant. Be there in 10, bring snacks. God bless Milo. While I waited, I tried to act normal, helped string fairy lights, avoided Candace's gaze. She smiled too tightly, her mascara too perfect. I asked if she needed anything. No, darling, just make sure Zoe has everything she needs. She's our princess today. I nodded, but the word "our" scraped at my nerves. Milo arrived in his ancient Ford Focus, blasting indie rock. He wore mismatched socks and carried a bag of trail mix like we were going camping. You're not joking, he said as I showed him the message. Wish I was. Who sent it? No idea. Burner number? We agreed not to tell anyone, not Zoe, not Dad, and definitely not Candace. Not until we knew what we were dealing with. The drive to the cabin was quiet, the tension like static between us. Milo kept the music low. I kept replaying Candace's face in my head. Her eyes were always kind, her hugs always tight. But something about today felt off. The gravel road to the cabin was overgrown, shaded by trees that looked like they were guarding secrets. The cabin stood at the edge of a clearing, cute, peaceful, and completely out of place for how creepy it suddenly felt. I'd only been here once before, Years ago, for hot cocoa and board games during a snowstorm, Candace had made everything feel magical then. Now it felt like a trap. We stepped out. Milo held up a Swiss Army knife like it was going to save us. I found the spare key in the flower pot beside the door, exactly where Candace said she might leave it in emergencies. My hand trembled as I pushed the key into the lock. Click! The door creaked open. Inside was pristine, cozy rugs, fireplace untouched, books lined up neatly, Candace's favorite throw blanket folded on the armrest. It all looked so normal. I almost felt silly until I noticed something that wasn't quite right. A pair of men's boots, brand new, large, too big for Candace. Milo raised an eyebrow. She dating a lumberjack? I moved further in, checking the side room. It was set up like a guest room duffel bag on the bed. Shaving kit on the sink. Deodorant. Cologne. I opened the closet. That's when I saw it. A framed photo. Candace and Brian, together. Smiling, at the beach. And it was dated, 2 weeks ago. I dropped the frame. It clattered to the floor, the glass cracking. What the Milo started. But I already had the drawer open. Inside were more photos, printed selfies, receipts, a note from Candace. Don't forget to wear the gray tie. Zoe loves that one. XO. It was in her handwriting. I knew it like I knew my own name. Milo picked up a crumpled receipt. Fancy hotel in Traverse City from last month. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. Brian and Candace, together. Cheating. That was one thing. But this was something worse. This was a coordinated lie. A betrayal with layers. My sister was supposed to marry this man. Candace, our stepmother, was helping him play her. Why? And then I saw it. A folder tucked under the bed, inside a legal document. Power of attorney. Zoe's name on it. Brian's signature as witness. And Candace's as legal advisor. My heart stopped. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. They weren't just cheating, they were planning something. I snapped photos of everything, the folder, the pictures, the hotel receipts. Every shred of it went to a hidden cloud folder. Milo helped, silent now, his usual sarcasm replaced by quiet fury. As we stepped out into the daylight, I realized the sun felt different, like it didn't want to shine on what we'd found. We drove back in silence. Every bump on the road rattled the thoughts in my head. I didn't know if I could face Zoe. I didn't know how to tell her, but I had to. Because whatever Candace and Brian were up to, it wasn't love. It was calculated, legal, dangerous. And I wasn't about to let my sister walk down the aisle into that. The drive back to the wedding venue felt longer than the trip to the cabin. Milo kept glancing at me, but neither of us spoke. What could we say? We'd just uncovered something out of a movie. Only this wasn't fiction. This was Zoe's life, and it was about to go off a cliff. When we pulled up, the house was buzzing. Guests had started arriving. Laughter and the smell of fried food hung in the air. Kids ran around with juice boxes while my dad laughed at something one of the uncles said. Milo parked across the street. I couldn't even get out of the car. My hands were shaking too hard. She has to know, I finally said, my voice raw. Milo nodded. You sure she'll believe it? I hesitated. That was the thing. Zoe believed in people too much. That's why this would crush her. She loved Brian like he hung the moon. And Candace, she called her mom even after all these years. I took a breath and texted her. Hey, can you meet me in Dad's study? 5 minutes? Alone? It's serious. Zoe responded almost instantly. Okay, you okay? I didn't answer. I was already walking toward the house. Dad's study was tucked behind the living room, quiet, neat, smelling faintly of old leather and lemon polish. I shut the door behind me and waited. A minute later, Zoe walked in. Her hair was pinned back, her makeup half finished, her expression full of curiosity and concern. What's going on? You're freaking me out. I couldn't sugarcoat it. There wasn't time. Zoe, I said, you can't marry Brian. She froze. What? Why would you even say that? I held up my phone and opened the cloud folder, and I showed her everything. The hotel receipts, the photos of Brian and Candace at the lake house, the note about the gray tie, and finally, the power of attorney document with her name on it. She didn't move, didn't blink. She just stared. Each new photo hit like a punch to the gut. I could see her unraveling. This has to be fake, she whispered. He wouldn't. My voice was calm, but inside I was screaming. It's real. Zoe, I found it at the cabin. Candace has been hiding this. They've been meeting up, plotting, and that document gives Brian access to your trust fund. She shook her head. Candace helped me fill that out because I didn't understand it. She said it was just in case of emergencies. That was the setup. She backed away, hugging herself. Her veil caught the corner of a chair and slipped from her bun, floating to the floor. I need proof, she said, her voice cracking. Real proof. I reached into my pocket and pulled out one more thing, a voice memo I recorded at the cabin. Brian had left a voicemail for Candace on a burner phone. I'd hit play, recorded it on my own phone. I pressed play now. Hey babe, Zoe's still clueless. After today, we're golden. Get the docs ready and we'll book the tickets. You and me finally free. Zoe's knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor. She was crying now, gasping. Not loud, but like her lungs forgot how to work. I was going to marry him in 4 hours, she whispered. I know, I said, holding her close, but you're not going to. We waited until she calmed down. Then we made a plan. Step 1. Confront Candace in private. We didn't want a scene. Not yet. Step 2. Let Zoe confront Brian at the altar in public. If he didn't admit to it, we'd have the voicemail and the documents as backup. It was risky, but Zoe said one thing that stuck with me. I want them to feel what I felt today. Shock, betrayal, public embarrassment. I didn't argue. I found Candace in the living room, overseeing the appetizers like nothing was wrong. She turned to me, smiling. There you are. We need more napkins. Darling, would you mind? Can I talk to you privately? Her eyes flickered. Of course. We stepped into the hallway. I shut the door behind us. Candace raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? You tell me, I said, pulling out my phone, because I went to your cabin this morning. Her face didn't change. That scared me more than anything. I found the photos, the receipts, the note, the power of attorney. Still no change. And I found the voicemail, Brian's little pep talk before his big con. She tilted her head, slowly. You went through my things? She said, that's a crime, you know. I'm not the one committing fraud. That did it. Her mask cracked, just a little. She stepped closer, voice low and venomous. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? I raised you. You were a mess after your mom died. I took a breath. Yeah, and I've been trying to make her proud ever since. I think today I finally did. Candace's eyes narrowed. What do you want? I smiled, Basisi. I want you to sit down, stay quiet, and watch as your plan goes up in flames. Back in the bridal suite, Zoe stood in her wedding gown, makeup fixed, eyes clear. A fire had lit in her that I hadn't seen in years. I'm ready, she said. Are you sure? She nodded. I'm not the victim today. They are. The ceremony started right on time. Guests filled the chairs. Dad beamed. Not knowing a storm was about to land, Brian stood at the front, cool as ever, smiling. Candace sat in the second row, wearing pearls. I stood beside Zoe behind the curtain. And when the music swelled and the doors opened, she stepped out, radiant, every bit the bride, except this bride wasn't walking into forever. She was walking into battle. The ceremony was beautiful at first glance. Sunlight poured through the windows of the little lakeside chapel. The aisle was lined with white peonies. Soft piano music played. Guests smiled, whispered, dabbed at their eyes with tissues. And Zoe. She walked slowly toward the altar like this was any other wedding. Not the moment she'd planned to ruin. I stood off to the side, heart pounding. My phone was recording in my pocket, angled perfectly to catch what was about to go down. Brian stood at the front, hands clasped, looking every bit the charming groom. That stupid smug half-smile was still on his face. He hadn't suspected a thing. Candace watched from the second row, poised, pearl necklace gleaming. If she was nervous, it didn't show. She gave Zoe a proud nod when she reached the altar. It made me sick. The officiant cleared his throat and began his welcome. Blah blah, love is patient, love is kind, the usual stuff. But then Zoe did something no one expected. She raised her hand. "I'd like to say something first," she said, her voice calm but loud enough to silence the room. The officiant blinked. Of course." Zoe turned to the crowd. "I know this is unusual," she said, "but today's not going to go the way any of you thought it would." Murmurs rippled through the chapel. A few guests leaned forward. Zoe turned to Brian, her bouquet trembling just slightly. "I was ready to marry you," she said. "I loved you. I trusted you. I believed every word you said to me." Brian frowned, confused. "Zoe, what?" But then I found out the truth. She reached into her dress and pulled out a folded photo, the one of him and Candace at the lake house. She held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said, voice rising, "was taken 2 weeks ago. My fiancé and my stepmother." Gasps. Someone dropped their phone. Brian's face went white. Candace stood up fast, face stiff. "That's not what it looks like," Brian said quickly, reaching for her hand. "It was just a friendly—" Zoe pulled her hand back. "Don't lie." She turned toward the pews. "For anyone who needs more proof, there's a voicemail too, from Brian, saying I'm clueless, and that after today, they'd be finally free." People were frozen. My dad stood slowly, confusion turning to horror. Candace looked like she might faint or attack someone, and then Zoe delivered the final blow. "They weren't just cheating," she said, "they were plotting. Brian and Candace helped me sign over power of attorney. I didn't realize what it meant, but it would have given them access to my trust fund, the one my mom left me." The room went silent, just pure, stunned silence. And then someone stood up, Mrs. Harper, our elderly neighbor. "I saw them together at that cabin 3 weeks ago," she said loudly, looking straight at Candace. "She told me it was her secret escape. I didn't think much of it, but she was with him, not her husband." Candace finally snapped. "She's lying," she shouted, stepping into the aisle. "This is all a setup. These kids, Zoe and her brother, they're trying to ruin me." My dad turned to her slowly. "You told me you were visiting your sister that weekend." Candace's mouth opened, then closed. Zoe's hands clenched the bouquet so tightly, petals broke off. Dad looked at me. "You knew." I nodded once. "I went to the cabin this morning. I found everything. I just didn't want to hurt you more than necessary." Candace stepped forward again, eyes blazing. "You little traitors, after everything I've done for you." And that's when Zoe threw her bouquet. Right at her. It hit Candace in the chest and fell to the floor with a dramatic thump. "I'm done pretending you were ever part of this family," Zoe said. Brian looked like he wanted to crawl out of his own skin. "This isn't fair." "Fair," Zoe laughed, "but it was hollow. You used me. You lied to my face for months, and you thought I'd never find out." She turned back to the officiant. "I'm not marrying him, but I do want to thank everyone for being here today. It means a lot. You all witnessed the moment I dodged the biggest mistake of my life." The guests started to clap. At first unsure, then stronger. Then full-on cheering. Someone whistled. Candace stormed out, heels clacking like gunshots. Brian chased after her, probably to beg her to save him now that his cash cow had kicked him out of the barn. Zoe stayed standing at the altar for a few seconds longer. Then she let out a breath and laughed. It wasn't fake. It wasn't bitter. It was relief. Later, after the guests cleared out and the caterers started packing up untouched food, Zoe and I sat on the chapel steps. She was still in her dress, though she'd kicked off her shoes. I handed her a bottle of water. She sipped in silence. "You okay?" I asked. "No," she said, "but I will be." We sat in silence a little longer. "Thank you," she said finally, "for trusting that something was wrong, for going to the cabin. You'd have done the same for me." She nodded. "Yeah, I would have. I just didn't think Candace. I thought she loved us." I swallowed hard. So did I. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Guess we both learned something today. That people suck." She snorted. "They were tougher than we thought." That night, back at home, I opened the cloud folder again, just to make sure everything was still there. Photo, voicemail, power of attorney documents, all of it. I sent copies to our family attorney, just in case Candace or Brian tried anything else. But deep down, I knew something was still coming. People like them don't go down without a fight. And I wasn't about to let my guard down. Not now. Not with Dad still in the dark about how far Candace had gone. Not with Brian already trying to reach out to Zoe again through mutual friends. And not when I had proof that could destroy them both. 3 days after the wedding, that wasn't. Our lives were still smoldering from the fallout. Dad hadn't spoken to anyone since that night. He locked himself in his home office, blinds drawn, barely eating. I heard him crying once, just once, but it was enough to wreck me. Zoe was staying at my apartment. She'd boxed up everything from her old room within hours of getting home. Even the framed picture of her and Candace from her high school graduation trashed. I offered to help, but she said doing it alone helped her think. Milo swung by every day with snacks and inappropriate jokes, trying to lighten the mood. We needed that, because beneath the surface, things were getting messier by the second. Candace had gone full damage control. She posted online that Zoe was emotionally unstable and had called off the wedding due to paranoia. Brian backed her up. Photos of the two of them at a coffee shop surfaced on social media, laughing like nothing had happened. The comments were worse than I expected. "This is why men don't trust women anymore." Maybe Zoe was too controlling. Brian dodged a bullet. I wanted to scream, but Zoe, she just saved screenshots. Quiet, focused, she wasn't done. Neither was I. I met Sarah Patel, our old neighbor and now a practicing attorney, at a diner downtown. She was sharp, direct, and way too calm for someone holding the pieces of our family in her hands. I slid a flash drive across the table. Everything's on there. The photos, the voicemail, the signed documents. She plugged it into her laptop, brows furrowing. "And you're sure Candace signed this as a witness without Zoe understanding the legal consequences?" She guided her through it, told her it was for emergencies, said it was normal. Sarah nodded slowly. That's coercion, and possibly fraud, especially if she and Brian intended to use the access for personal gain. She did. I found a file in her cabin. Transfer records. Bank account statements, all pointing to her and Brian trying to drain Zoe's trust once they had control. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Can you get me those documents?" I already uploaded them to a secured drive. Good, because we're going after both of them. That night, Zoe called a family meeting. Just the three of us, her, me, and Dad. He finally came out of his shell, sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch like it hurt just to exist. "I don't want to talk about her," he said. "Dad," Zoe said gently, "we need to." He looked at her. Really looked. "She loved you." "No, she acted like she loved me," Zoe corrected. She used us both. She wanted control and money. He looked down at his hands. I'm filing fraud charges, she said. His head snapped up. Against Candace. And Brian? He didn't speak right away, just stared at the floor. Then he nodded. Once. Slowly. I trusted her, he whispered. I let her into our lives. Into your lives. You didn't know. I said, none of us did. I should have. No, Dad, Zoe said. She fooled all of us, but we're not staying quiet about it. And just like that, he sat up straighter. Good. Within a week, Sarah had filed civil charges against both Candace and Brian for attempted financial fraud and coercion. The local news picked up the story almost immediately, mostly because Zoe agreed to do a short interview. She didn't name names, but the story exploded. Bride exposes financial scheme on wedding day. It went viral. Within hours, Candace shut down all her social media accounts. Brian tried to post a video denying everything, but he'd already been doxxed. People found his burner accounts, his travel records, his connection to Candace traced back almost a year before he met Zoe. It was no longer a story. It was a full-blown scandal. Then came the twist none of us saw coming. One morning, I got a call from Sarah, her voice low and clipped. We found something else? She said, Okay, Candace has been funneling money out of your dad's construction company for months, maybe longer. I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. What? She used her access to the business accounts thanks to her marriage to your father and created a dummy consultancy firm. Every month, a few $1,000s went out, labeled as operational fees. And where did the money go? Into an account shared with Brian. We traced it. My hands clenched into fists. How much? Close to $90,000? Gone? We brought the evidence to Dad. He stared at the screen in silence for what felt like forever. I let her do payroll, he said. Said she wanted to help with bookkeeping. I thought she was being supportive. She was stealing from you, Zoe said gently. We're filing criminal charges next. And this time, Dad didn't hesitate. Do it. We filed the reports. Candace and Brian were both hit with restraining orders and subpoenas. Their assets were frozen pending investigation. Zoe finally exhaled the night she got the email confirming the freeze. I think she'd been holding her breath since the wedding. But the weight wasn't off our shoulders yet. Brian's attorney reached out with a settlement offer. They'd return what was left of the trust fund, apologize privately. In exchange, Zoe would drop the civil charges. No, she said, they don't get to sneak away. Not again. Candace tried to reach out, too, through a lawyer, through mutual friends, even left a voicemail crying about how she still loved us. Zoe played it once, then deleted it. Love doesn't look like that, she said. Our town rallied behind us in the end. Neighbors brought casseroles again, real ones this time, not the passive-aggressive kind. The bakery Zoe used to work at offered her a management position. Dad's crew put up a banner in the construction yard. We got your back, boss. I started sleeping again. Not well, but without waking up from nightmares about that damn cabin. Sarah continued building the case. Milo helped me scan files and build timelines. And Zoe. She started smiling again. The real kind. The kind that meant something had healed. One afternoon, we went back to the cabin. It felt like closing a chapter. We walked in together, found the photo frame still cracked on the floor, the blanket still folded on the couch. Zoe stood in the middle of the room and took one long breath. Burn it, I asked. She shook her head. Nah, I want to keep it. As a reminder. I looked around. A reminder of what? That I'll never ignore my instincts again. As we locked the door behind us, her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Trial date confirmed. Next month. Full charges filed. Zoe looked at me, eyes sharp, jaw set. You ready? She asked. I nodded. Let's end this. Story 3. My name's Eli Jennings. I'm 32 and I work as a wildlife rehabber in the mountains of North Carolina. My days are quiet, filled with screeching owls, limping raccoons, and the occasional orphaned deer. It's far from glamorous, but it's real. I've never been much for crowds or attention. That's always been Camille's thing, my younger sister by 3 years. Social media queen turned lifestyle influencer. Think curated sunsets, $1,000 throw pillows, and filtered raw moments. Her life is spotless on the surface, but underneath a hurricane of control. Camille got engaged to Brent, a marketing executive with the kind of teeth that belong in toothpaste commercials. Their wedding was scheduled at a private estate overlooking Lake Lure, with enough flowers to choke a rainforest. The whole thing was so far removed from my life that I nearly skipped it altogether. But family is family, right? So I showed up, in a second-hand suit, shoes scuffed from chasing a possum out of my truck that morning, ready to support her, even if I didn't fit the aesthetic. What I wasn't ready for, what no one could have prepared me for, was that speech. The one that shattered everything. It started at the reception. White tents stretched over the lawn, fairy lights dangling from tree branches, guests sipping champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. I sat at a table near the heaters, next to relatives I hadn't seen in 10 years, and a guy who claimed to be Camille's brand consultant. I sipped soda, listening to drone-level conversations about crypto and summer homes in Maine. I was already counting the minutes until I could leave. Then Camille took the mic. She looked stunning, of course she did. Silk gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair like something out of a bridal magazine. She smiled sweetly, the picture of a grateful bride. And then she turned toward me. "To my big brother, Eli," she said, her voice dripping honey. I felt 200 heads turn toward me. "Eli spends his days rescuing squirrels and owls," she said, pausing for effect. "If you ever need someone to listen to your emotional breakdowns while spoon-feeding a baby raccoon, Eli's your guy." The crowd chuckled. "And if you're looking for a babysitter for your sad days, don't worry, Eli's free 24/7. Laughter. Big, roaring laughter. I froze. My chest locked up. I smiled barely, tried to pretend it was fine, just a harmless joke. But inside, something cracked. She moved on to thank the vendors, the caterer, Brent's parents, gushed about love, but I couldn't hear any of it. My ears were still ringing. After the speech, I slipped out. No one noticed, not even Camille. I found a bench near the lake and just sat there, staring at the water. I thought about the fox I'd spent 3 hours helping that morning, the couple who drove 4 towns over to bring me an injured barn owl last week, the kid who cried when I let her help release a raccoon back into the woods. All of it, meaningful, quiet, real. And Camille had reduced it to a punchline. I wanted to tell myself it didn't matter, that her words were just noise. But it did matter, because it wasn't just a joke. It was the latest in a long line of digs, the subtle ways she dismissed my work, my choices, my whole life, and for once, I couldn't just brush it off. Back at the tent, Oliver, Brent's older brother, stepped up to the mic. I didn't know much about him, only that he was a software developer who lived in Seattle and rarely came home. He cleared his throat. I had something else planned. He said, "But after that speech, I feel like it's time someone said a few real things." Camille turned in her seat, laughing nervously. Oliver looked straight at her. "Camille, you've built a beautiful life, but what you did tonight turning your brother into a prop wasn't beautiful. It was cruel." The tent fell dead silent. "He's one of the kindest people I've ever met. He doesn't broadcast it, he doesn't monetize it, but that doesn't make it any less powerful." Every muscle in my body tensed. "He spends his life helping creatures who can't help themselves. And unlike most of us here, he doesn't do it for validation. He does it because it's the right thing." People fidgeted. Forks clinked nervously. "And I think, in a world obsessed with perfection," Oliver said, "there's nothing braver than choosing to be real." He set the mic down and walked off. I stared at him as he passed. He gave me a quiet nod. That nod saved me. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. Someone had posted a video of Camille's speech, then the video of Oliver's response. It was blowing up. Comments flooded in, supportive, critical, outraged. People from all over the country were weighing in. Eli sounds like the kind of person we need more of. That bride was straight up mean. Protect Eli at all costs. Camille posted a story on Instagram. Sometimes jokes land wrong. I love my brother. Let's all move on. It had the emotional sincerity of a wet napkin. I went back to work that week, expecting the storm to pass. But it didn't. Local reporters called. Someone started a GoFundMe for my clinic. I even got an email from a podcast asking if I'd talk about emotional resilience after public embarrassment. And through it all, Camille sent me nothing. No call, no text, not even a meme. Until a week later, she showed up at my cabin unannounced, driving a Tesla on a dirt road. She got out, heels wobbling in the gravel. Can we talk? I crossed my arms. Now you want to talk. She bit her lip, eyes watering instantly, always the actress. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a joke. No, it wasn't. I said it was a performance, and I was the punchline. She looked down. You always make me feel guilty. I shook my head. No, you feel guilty because deep down, you know I've never once tried to make you feel small, but you've made a career out of making others feel invisible. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. I'm not going to post some big takedown video, I said, but I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen. She left. And this time, I didn't feel bad for her. I felt free. That night, I sat on my porch with a rescued owl perched beside me and the stars overhead. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the background character in someone else's story. I felt like the main one in mine. The wedding storm had mostly drifted off social media, but my life still tangled in the fallout. The GoFundMe. Some stranger started for my clinic, passed $20,000 in 3 days. I tried to shut it down, felt wrong, like pity money, but the messages kept pouring in. I watched your story and cried. Thank you for what you do. We need more Elis in this world. My daughter wants to volunteer at your clinic now. The support lifted something in me, but it also made Camille's silence louder, not even a text. No apology, no explanation. Just curated posts from Bali, where she and Brent had gone for a healing honeymoon. Hashtags like I didn't care if they were staged. I cared that she still pretended like nothing had happened. One Monday morning, I was elbow deep in a porcupine rescue when Rachel showed up. Not the porcupine's owner, Rachel Morris, a lawyer I hadn't seen since college. She used to lead our campus environmental club and once convinced the dining hall to stop using plastic straws. Sharp as a tack, kind without trying. She stood in my clinic doorway, holding 2 coffees. You always forget breakfast, she said. I blinked. What are you doing here? She smiled. Saw the videos, recognized your face. Figured you'd need caffeine and possibly legal advice. We sat outside under a pine tree. The owl from the wedding blinked lazily in its enclosure nearby. Recovering from a broken wing, Rachel glanced at her phone. You know your sister registered a business using your name. I froze. What? Eli Jennings Media LLC, formed last year, in Charlotte. I shook my head. That's not mine. She's using your name and fake digital signatures to funnel sponsorship deals through your identity. It's fraud. Serious fraud. My stomach turned. She posted screenshots of donations to your clinic, but they didn't match the GoFundMe. Rachel continued. She's been pocketing some of the money. I didn't even know she had access to that, I said quietly. She doesn't? Rachel replied. She created a fake fundraising mirror site. People thought they were donating to your clinic. They weren't. I stood up, my hands trembling. That's not just betrayal, I said. That's criminal. Rachel nodded. We need to act. Quietly but firmly. I already started documenting everything. That night, I walked Max and Luna, my two mutts who never judged, never wavered, just pure, muddy love. The stars were soft overhead, the Blue Ridge Mountains sleeping in the distance. Camille had weaponized kindness for clout. She took what people felt and twisted it into content. And now she was making money off my name, my work, my pain. It wasn't just a bad joke anymore. It was war. Rachel and I spent evenings combing through Camille's public records, screen capping every sponsored post, every forged receipt. We traced 3 brands she partnered with under the fake Eli LLC. 2 were outdoor lifestyle companies, 1 a pet food brand. We emailed them, attaching documents. Just so you know, Rachel wrote, you've been funding a lie. Within 48 hours, 2 sponsorships pulled out. The third posted a statement, we are investigating serious claims regarding improper use of a third-party identity. We do not condone fraud. Camille noticed. She called me at 2 a.m. I let it ring. Then came the text, how dare you? I stared at the glowing screen. Not I'm sorry, not let's talk, just blame. I typed, you stole from me. Her response was instant. I built your platform. You were nothing before that video went viral. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The way she capitalized built said everything. She really believed she made me. A few days later, I got a call from my mom. Not unexpected, but not welcome. Camille's upset. She said, you've humiliated her. Mom, she committed fraud. I replied, she's your sister. Family forgives. Did you even watch the speech? I asked. A pause. She didn't mean it, Mom muttered. She always jokes too far. I bit back a sharp response. My mother had always worshipped Camille's confidence, mistaking it for strength. She used my name to commit a crime. I said, forgiveness comes after accountability. Mom sighed, you're being dramatic. I hung up. Rachel filed the first formal complaint on my behalf with the North Carolina Department of Revenue. She said more were coming, civil, maybe even criminal. Meanwhile, Camille's Instagram followers started noticing something. She wasn't posting as often. Her comments were turning, people asked questions. Why did the fundraiser disappear? Why are people saying your brother's suing you? You said you were helping wildlife. Where are the receipts? Camille tried damage control. She posted a photo of us from childhood, me in a raccoon costume, her grinning in a tiara. The caption read, I'll always love my brother. We're just different people living different truths. The comments brutal. That's not an apology. Gaslighting 101. Return the money. She deleted the post within hours. Then she went quiet. The next week, I got a knock on my clinic door. It was Brent, her husband. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. His perfect hair a little less perfect. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped outside, crossed my arms. She told me she made a mistake. He began. I raised an eyebrow. She forged business filings in my name. I said, that's not a mistake. That's identity theft. Brent rubbed the back of his neck. She's spiraling. The sponsorships, her management dropped her. I don't think she thought it would get this far. She thought she was invincible. I replied, she said you'd forgive her if it stayed private. I stared at him. I've forgiven her for a lot. This isn't one of those things. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry. For what she did. And for laughing at that speech. I didn't realize. His voice cracked. It wasn't funny. I didn't say anything, because there was nothing left to say. That night, I stood in my clinic, cleaned a cage, brushed straw out of Luna's fur, rechecked a crow's wing bandage. This was my life. Unfiltered, uncurated, messy, but mine. Camille had tried to paint me as a joke, then tried to profit off the mess she made. but the cracks in her perfect life were growing wider. And soon, everyone would see what I already knew. Beneath all her filters was nothing real at all. Camille's silence didn't last. One morning, I woke to a voicemail from her manager. Well, former manager. "Hi, Eli," the voice said stiffly. "We're terminating Camille's contract effective immediately. Multiple sponsors have cited reputational damage. Also, there may be legal inquiries coming your way. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Legal inquiries, plural. Rachel confirmed what I feared later that day. Camille's now under investigation by the state. Wire fraud, misuse of personal identity, and possible tax violations. You're in the clear, but they may contact you as a witness. I just nodded. There wasn't much else to say. The wheels were in motion. At the clinic, life felt split. In one corner, I was nursing a fawn with a twisted ankle back to health. In another, checking on a raccoon with a nasty infection. Outside, Max and Luna lounged in the sun like nothing in the world had changed. And then my phone would buzz. A reporter? A lawyer? Another person asking for a comment on Camille's downfall? I kept saying no. Because this wasn't about attention for me. It was about the truth. The only time I slipped was the night I visited my parents. Dad answered the door. Slower than usual. Thinner, too. I hadn't seen him since before the wedding. He didn't say much, just nodded me inside. Mom stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, disappointed line. "She's in trouble," she said without greeting me. She put herself there. I replied. Mom's eyes narrowed. "You're blowing this up. You always hated that she was the successful one." I laughed once, a sharp, bitter sound. "I save animals. Mom, I make barely enough to pay rent, but I sleep at night. Camille lied, stole, and humiliated me for content, and you're still defending her." She didn't respond. Dad sat on the couch, staring at his hands. "Do you think I wanted this?" I asked. "You think I enjoy having my sister investigated for fraud?" Silence. But that silence was louder than any answer. Rachel called the next day. "You're not going to like this," she said. "Camille filed a counterclaim. Says you're trying to destroy her reputation. Claims you leaked her sponsorship info and damaged her brand out of a personal jealousy." My jaw clenched. "Is she serious?" "She's desperate," Rachel said. "And when people like her feel the net closing in, they throw whatever they can." I stared out the clinic window, clouds rolling over the trees like slow breath. "What do we do?" I asked. Rachel's voice was calm. "We win." It didn't take long for her counterclaim to fall apart. The judge rejected it before it even reached a hearing. Our documentation, her forged digital signatures, the screenshots, her deleted posts which we'd archived left no doubt. But the damage Camille tried to do in her final swing stung worse than I expected. Because I realized then she'd rather destroy me than admit she was wrong. That wasn't a sibling. That was a rival wearing a family mask. A week later, she showed up at my clinic again. No cameras, no filters, just her. She looked small, pale, tired, makeup-free for once. Her voice trembled. "I lost everything," she said. "Brent left. My agency dropped me. My income is zero." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She looked up at me. "Are you happy?" "Happy," I echoed. "No, this isn't about revenge. It's about consequences." She blinked hard. I didn't know who else to turn to. "Not the best person to say that to," I muttered. "I wasn't trying to ruin you," she said. "I thought I could control the narrative. You always made me feel like I didn't matter unless I was perfect." I tilted my head. "And your solution was to make me the joke." Camille looked down. I thought if I made it funny, people would like me more. "That's the thing," I said. "You made it funny. I lived it." She didn't respond. And I didn't offer her forgiveness. Not yet. Later that week, Camille posted a new video. No music, no editing, just her in her car, eyes puffy, voice raw. I messed up. She said, I hurt someone I love, I lied, and I made a mistake trying to blame others when I got caught. She looked straight at the camera. Eli, if you're watching, I'm sorry. The comments exploded. Some forgave her, some didn't. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't care, but because this wasn't about online reactions anymore. This was about what came next, and what came next surprised me. Camille started volunteering at a local wildlife shelter, one of the smaller ones near Charlotte. They called me, actually, asked if I could vouch for her. I didn't stop her either. She mucked out cages, fed injured raccoons, learned how to handle owls without getting clawed. Somehow, she stuck with it. And after a month, she showed up at my clinic again. Not to plead, not to posture. Just to drop off donated supplies, bandages, feed, paper towels, with a quiet, thought you could use these. Then she left. I stood there for a long time, watching her car disappear down the gravel road. Then I went inside, back to work. Because no matter how this ended family or not, my mission didn't change. Save who I could, heal what I could, protect what mattered. Camille's world had burned down. Mine was just beginning to bloom. The court ruling came on a gray Monday morning, one of those days where the clouds sit low, like the sky forgot to stretch. I was elbow deep in cleaning an opossum enclosure when my phone buzzed. Rachel's voice was crisp. It's done. I didn't ask what it meant. I knew. Camille had accepted a plea agreement restitution for the fake fundraising, probation for the forged documents, and a formal statement clearing me of all wrongdoing. She avoided jail barely, but her reputation, it was scorched. Rachel's tone softened. You're free, Eli. I didn't reply at first. I just looked out across the muddy yard where Max and Luna wrestled in the leaves like none of this ever happened. Was I free? Maybe, or maybe I was finally letting go. The next day, Camille emailed me a copy of her official apology. It was formal, stamped, and legally binding. I acknowledged that Eli Jennings had no involvement in the formation or operation of any business under his name. I falsified documents without his consent and deeply regret the harm I caused. I skimmed the rest, not out of anger, out of exhaustion. You don't read every word of a fire report when the ashes are already cold. But it was there, black and white, truth where a joke used to be. A week later, I hosted a small event at the clinic, just a thank you cookout for volunteers, donors, and clients who stood by me when things got ugly. There was barbecue, paper plates, and a playlist of folksy acoustic songs. Simple, honest, mine. Halfway through the afternoon, I spotted Camille across the parking lot. She wasn't dressed for photos. Jeans, an old flannel, hair in a loose braid. She didn't come inside, just stood there, holding a box. I walked over slowly. She held it out without meeting my eyes. Pet food, and meds I picked up from a supplier who owed me a favor. Thanks, I said. She nodded. You look lighter. I shrugged. Not dragging your spotlight anymore. She smiled just barely. I deserved that. We stood in silence. No screaming, no tears, just two people trying to figure out if forgiveness had an expiration date. I meant the video, she said quietly, every word. I know, I said. I'm not asking you to forget it all. I won't, I said, but I'm learning how to carry it without letting it crush me. That seemed to hit her. She blinked, nodded once, and turned to go. But halfway to her car, she stopped. Hey, she called over her shoulder, if you ever need a hand here, I don't mind shoveling raccoon poop. I laughed. I'll keep that in mind. Fall melted into winter. The clinic stabilized, Word of mouth brought in more clients. A local high school started sending volunteers for credit hours. We built new cages, repainted the barn. I even installed heating in the opossum room. The GoFundMe money helped. Sure, but the real fuel came from the people who showed up, again and again. And from the clarity that came after fire, one night, I found myself scrolling back through old photos. Before the wedding, before the speech, a younger me smiling next to a deer release. Max as a pup, Camille and I, kids in the backyard, building a birdhouse. I didn't delete the pictures, but I didn't live in them either. Some stories don't need revenge, they need closure. Rachel visited again just before Christmas, brought pie, her laughter, and a thick file of finalized paperwork. The lawsuits were closed, the accounts in my name dissolved, my credit restored, the tax notices dismissed. Clean slate, She handed me a folder, and this is your clinic's new nonprofit status. Official. I blinked. Wait, nonprofit? She grinned. You've got donors. You've got a mission. Now you've got structure. Say hello to the Jennings Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The name stunned me. She tapped the folder. You earned it. On New Year's Eve, I walked the trail behind my cabin. Max trotted ahead. Luna lagged behind, chasing shadows in the snow. The woods were quiet. Peaceful. And for the first time in years, so was I. The wedding felt like a story I'd read once, emotional, chaotic, unforgettable, but no longer mine to live. Camille was rebuilding, one shelter shift at a time. Mom still called, still blamed the media, but she'd stopped trying to make me choose silence. Dad sent me a handwritten note, short but honest. I should have stood up for you sooner. I see that now. Progress, not perfection. I didn't forgive Camille with a grand gesture or a dramatic scene. I forgave her slowly, in letting her help with supplies, in answering her questions about opossum diets, in watching her scrub out cages without a phone in sight. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not turning away. The final chapter didn't come with fireworks. It came in spring, with the birth of 5 baby foxes found under a collapsed barn. Camille was already there, sorting bandages when I carried the crate inside. She looked at the tiny, blinking kits. Want me to prep the bottles, she asked. I handed her the formula, and in that moment, we weren't the influencer and the joke anymore. We were just 2 people trying to fix what was broken. Epilogue, 1 year later. The Jennings Wildlife Rehabilitation Center now takes in over 200 animals a year. We built a new flight cage, started an intern program, partnered with local schools. Camille helps part-time. No posts, no press, just work. She still struggles with what she lost, with what she did, but she's honest now. And that's more than I ever thought I'd get. Rachel and I, we're something. We take things slow, but when she's here, the air feels easier. Some wounds leave scars, but scars mean you healed. I don't think I'll ever forget what happened at that wedding, but I don't need to relive it anymore. Because the world I've built since, it's real. Rooted, wild, and mine. The spotlight never touched me the way it did Camille. But in its absence, I found something better. Peace.